Hey there! Welcome to episode 36 of an ongoing series where we basically take the camera anywhere we want, and we try to find secrets and new discoveries to some of our favorite games. And with that said, let's get going. So, quick disclaimer, this is going to be a mini episode. There were some technical difficulties, unfortunately, which didn't allow us to see everything that we should be able to see in Goldeneye, which means that this game still has some secrets to hold. But despite being met with so many adversities, we got a pretty decent episode out of this. Anyways, at the very start of the game, you can see that there is a wall right behind Bond. And if we take the camera through that wall, we can see that originally there was a cave here. And if you were a little sneaky spy, you may have been able to peek through the cracks to somewhat see what's on the other side. The developers saw this and added a square rock texture just in case the player got a slight glimpse. So it may have already caught your attention what Bond actually looks like behind the camera, which is that he's just a gun in a hand. This is typically the case for nearly every single first-person shooter, but what's interesting about Goldeneye is that the developers use a certain technique with layers. So some objects will always remain in the front no matter where the camera is. And viewing the gun from the front creates a weird effect. Although Bond's hand is fully modeled, you're not really allowed to see it at the front angle because the layer technique that the developers use don't allow it to happen. However, if you look at it from certain angles, you can still see that Bond's whole hand is actually there. And now we're going to look at under the truck, and not because I found Mew, but because there's actually something in the driver's side of the truck. When we zoom the camera in, we can see that the doors have their own textures on the inside. Now my guess as to why this still exists is because it's a full model for the doors, but other things needed to make a person driving in a car realistic, like an interior, a driver. That may have been all too many things to eat up the game's RAM, so the developers may have changed their mind at some point. Now this is just a guess, but it explains a lot as to why the windows are forever tinted. You cannot look inside the truck. The Nintendo 64 controller. It's kind of funny that there's a model of this inside James Bond's watch. Well, it turns out that this controller is fully modeled. If we turn the camera around, we can see that there's a spot for the rumble pack and the Z button. Although the Z button and the rumble pack are not present, you can see that there's a spot for the Z button, and that the rumble pack / memory card slot has that little concave spot that's normally there. Actually, you know what? Now that I'm looking at it, the Z button is the exact same as it is on the button prompt, so I guess the Z button is there. Alright, many of you have already seen the island from this game thanks to the overwhelming curiosity from the internet. But of course I gotta put it in, because if I don't, people are gonna ask where it is. The island on the opposite end of the dam is an unused area that was originally going to be accessed by boat, but was later cut from the game. And if you go to this island, you can see that there's a turret that was later used in the Runway Level, as well as a watchtower with wooden planks. Now, because you were actually supposed to be here at one point, the turret is fully modeled, and even has a texture representing the top of it. But as you can see, you're not supposed to be inside of it. Much like the turrets in the runway, they're just designed to either shoot at you or blow up. Now, the inside of the tower is the most interesting, because it has textures on the inside of the building that are unique to this tower alone. Like I said, it has wooden planks for the floors, and a multicolored dark gray for the walls. And really quick, I just want to show all of you that around the dam's bend, there's a full mountainside blocking you off. Now normally for Boundary Break, when there's a bend to represent where the water's coming from but you can't see from where, there's typically nothing on the other side. But because you're supposed to be able to use a boat at one point, I believe that's the reason why there's actually mountains all around it. It was originally intended to be a barrier for the player. Here's an example as to why this episode's so short. There's a lot of weird graphical hiccups, and finding secrets in certain areas is just entirely impossible. Now there was one thing I wanted to show you guys despite this, and that is a platform on the other side of the dam. See, when James Bond bungee jumps, you can see at the bottom a concrete platform with a metal plate. Now after finding this and doing a little bit of research online, I found that it's theorized that this was used to represent one of the beginning scenes of the movie where James Bond uses his laser to break open the metal plate. Now I imagine this was supposed to be done after you bungee jumped in this level, but again, that's just me guessing. Oh yeah, the vents. When I was young and playing Goldeneye, I always thought about what's beyond certain areas in the vents. It always sparked my imagination and curiosity, seeing that there's a gap before you enter the bathroom stall, but with no way to get over there. But now, with Magic Camera, we can at least see the height of the vents now, and really just get an outside perspective of the intricacies of the vents. Like for example, the vent that has plagued my childhood for years apparently has a very long drop once you get to the end of that vent. Unlike the rest of the vertical vents, this one almost goes on forever. It's at least 3 to 4 times bigger than any of the other vents in this area. Much like the Super Mario 64 episode, Goldeneye also uses the method of when character models are far enough away, they turn blocky, as you can see with this scientist here, and this Minecraft-looking Natalia. Now this was kind of surprising to me. The folders at the start of the game, where you select your file, are fully 3D modeled. Why on earth would they be anything other than 2D textures? I don't understand. But on top of that, the Bond photo and the paperclip are their own textures, and if you turn the camera around, you can see that the folders have a back end as well. So apparently when Bond is unequipped, obviously he does the chop move, but much to my surprise, the hand is always there. If you lower the camera just a bit, you can see that the hand is always resting just above your waist area, waiting to be used. And funny enough, if you lower the camera, you can look like a tiny Bond ready to shake people's hands. Here's another gated area in what is now the runway level, and the developers did something a little bit different for this one. In this case, they knew that Bond was going to be shorter than the gate itself, so the developers decided to do basic geometry, because no matter what angle you decide to look at it, your eyes would never be able to see anything lower than its height. So someone wanted to know what the third-person perspective is when you're inside the tank. Now since we pretty much already got that revelation with the hand just being the only thing that is actually on the screen when you're playing first person, there's no exciting revelations here, but it's still pretty entertaining to see a little hand take full control over a tank. Welcome to the jungle. So what we got here is all the trees in this area are actually planted deeper into the ground than initially intended. If you look below the surface, you can find unique textures assigned to the trees that you're not allowed to see, but it looks like it's supposed to be the mounds, like the start of the roots. James Bond will return. But for the time being, here's a zoom out of the credit sequence. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry that it's not one of the longest episodes. I know that there was some technical difficulties, so I'm gonna apologize for that. But still, we got a pretty decent sized episode out of it regardless. So, I've been getting a couple of complaints that we've been doing too many Nintendo games. And you know what? I know. Who doesn't love Nintendo? But I agree. We've been kind of doing a combo of Nintendo games. What we're going to do, for those folks, is we're going to put Dark Souls 3 back into the poll, and we're also going to introduce Silent Hill 2 to the poll.
Ooh, spooky scary.
So, 2 very mature games. You guys can decide which one you want for this week. And if you guys don't mind, I'd love it if you guys subscribed to the channel. I know I usually promote the playlist, but this week I'm going to do the channel. Channel button's going to be right there, and consider it. All right, guys, I'll see you next week.